Let's start. So, so today we're going to talk about how to create the scale and then examine its distribution and conduct the bivariate analysis. Okay. So creating a scale starts with the concern that individual item cannot fully measure a concept, and then we want to measure. We want to ask multiple dimensions around the question to fully measure the question, right? The concept. Right? That's why we are adopting multiple items. Okay. And then typically scale is measured by adding all of the responses up, all of the numerical responses up. Okay. An important issue in constructing a scale is reliability, right? So in the survey project, we are focusing on inter-item reliability or internal reliability. So it means that how consistent what respondents' responses are across items. So if this person said, say, I feel very irritated all the time, and then this person should not say I'm happy all the time at the same time, right? To have a certain level of consistency in the responses, right? So the measure of this internal reliability is Kronbach's alpha. There are multiple measures of internal reliability, but this is the most representative measure of internal reliability, right? I won't bore you with the formula and stuff like that, but we'll just jump right into how Stata calculates this Kronbach's alpha, and then how to interpret the tables associated with that. Okay. So do you all have the printouts? Or, okay. As you can see from the printouts, there's this is the first page is the example of the list of data. And then if you move on to the next page, wait, did you all get it? Okay. This is so this is basically a measure. So in this example, the researcher is trying to measure the level of favorability of piece, basically, against phylum measure in international politics. Okay. And there are a bunch of items such as Jews are. How do you feel about Jews? How do you feel about the statement that Jews are our friends? And threatening is the best measure to keep the world international politics in order and stuff like that. Does it make sense? Yeah. And then the one of the most important issues is to measure internal reliability, and that's why the researcher is trying to use Chromebox Alpha in this case. Okay. So you may want to check the individual items frequency tables before checking the internal reliability, because as you can see from the first table, their Jew friends item has no problem with variability, right? It varies across all of the responses, as you can see from the frequency table, right? Good. But if you look at the second table, then you can see that a lot of people answered 4 to the item of threat, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that means that even if this person, Jew friends, and threat, even if this person said 1 or 2 or 3, these people said 1 to 3, they are most likely saying 4 all the time. So it means that there is no consistent pattern among items, right? You're gonna say 4 no matter what in the threat item. So we cannot see the consistent pattern among items. Does it make sense for you, or am I confusing you? Good? All good? Okay. So if someone, if some item has a lot of values such as 4, then it can become a strong indicator of low internal reliability. Good. So if internal reliability is too low, then you cannot really say that, oh, these items are measuring the same concept, right? You cannot say that. Does it make sense? Because the responses are not consistent enough to argue that these items are measuring the same concept. Good. Does it make sense? If that's the case, you may consider dropping this variable or this item from the analysis. Okay. Good. And then move on to the next page. Let's really dive into Chromebox Alpha test. Before doing the Chromebox Alpha test, you want to look at the summary table first. It has mean and standard deviation and cases. Standard deviation, for those who are not really familiar with the concept of standard deviation, it is a measure of variability in a variable. So if all the people said, say, 4 in an item, then then the standard deviation would be 0. And then all the people said different things in terms of 1 to 5, 1 to 3, 4, 5. Then standard deviation would be higher than 0. Sure. Does that make sense? So if standard deviation seems too low compared to other items, you should think about, oh, this might be the usual suspect of like yeah, low internal reliability. Good. But it's not zero, so it's we still have to look at the actual Chromebox alpha to measure internal reliability. Good. And then if you look at the correlation matrix, I'm sure you know how to read correlation matrix from Rubin's love scale, but I'll remind you how to read correlations table. For example, you can see suffer in the correlation table, correlation matrix, and then DRET is right there, right? And the correlation between suffer and DRET is 0.2060. As you can see from the table, right? Did you find that? Or good. As you can see from the table, compared to other correlations that are really that have higher values, DRET has consistently lower correlations with other items, right? Does it make sense? Yeah. So that's because like DRET, for DRET item, people said 4, mostly said 4 no matter what, like regardless of what they have said in the other items. So there is no strong correlations with each other in terms of like finding the correlational patterns. Does it make sense, or confusing, or all good? Okay. All right. And the next page actually give you the actual alpha test. So the number of cases is 39, and this mean is 34, and et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to look at that at this point, but you have to look at alpha if item is deleted, and then the Chromebox alpha at the bottom. So let's start with the alpha at the bottom. So it says 0.9110, right? It means a very high reliability because the common threshold for Chromebox alpha is 0.7. So as long as Chromebox alpha is higher than 0.7, you can safely say that these items have internal reliability. Does it make sense? So this is a customary threshold. There's no like legitimate reason why this should be 0.7 instead of 0.6 or 8, but this is the most common threshold, basically. So the alpha is over 0.7, so we can say that these items achieved high reliability, so that we can just use all of the items in the scale, in constructing the scale. Good. Does it make sense, or questions? All right. Yeah. And then alpha, if item deleted, indicates that if, for example, thread item is deleted, and then what would be the Chromevox alpha with all the other items? Does it make sense? Good. And you can see actually it slightly increases, right? So dropping this item actually helps increasing internal reliability a little bit. But the Chromevox alpha was over 0.7 before deleting the item anyways. So I would just, and then the changes not too drastic anyways. So I would just keep the item.
Which one gives the alpha when it's deleted?
Oh, thread for thread item. Oh, so the thread item alpha item is 45, right?
Oh, so this is like if this item was
Right,
deleted, that would be the alpha.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the last column is up. Yep. Good. Any questions? Nope. All right. And then you want to visit statistics for scale. It's basically Stata automatically like add all of the responses up and then make a new variable. And then it summarizes the statistics. The mean of that scale is 34, for example. And the number of variables that were added were 11, which means that there were 11 items used. Right? Does that make sense? Or good? Good. Okay. Let's move on to different example with low internal reliability and then what you should do when you face such a situation. So the next page has different items. And if you look at the correlation matrix, then you can see there are a lot of correlations are very weak. For example, like 0. 0.0175. This indicates a very weak correlation, right? Typically, it is said that 0.3 is the threshold for deciding this correlation is weak or not. So if the correlation is lower than 0.3, we say this correlation is really weak. Okay. You can see a lot of that in the matrix, right? So it means that the responses might not be too consistent. Does it make sense? Correlation is about like when you correlation will be high if this person says attract and thought. Attract is high, and then people said 5, right? But if the correlation were high, the responses should look like that, right? Doesn't make sense. But apparently, things like that. Yeah. So you don't see. You don't see a lot of patterns between the two variables, right? Right. Like people with high values don't necessarily have higher values compared to these people. So there is a very weak relationship going on in this case. Good. So we can conjecture that internal reliability will be really low because Chromebox alpha is basically the summary measure of like a multiple correlate measure of the correlation of multiple items. And then you can move on to the next page and then see that alpha is actually negative, which is really rare. And as you can see, this is definitely lower than 0.7, which is a common threshold for Chromebox alpha for internal reliability. So I would not say that these items are measuring the same concept. And then alpha if you look at alpha if item deleted, then deleting individual item does not improve a lot in terms of improve the scale a lot in terms of internal reliability. So I would not use these. I would not construct a scale out of these items. Good, but hopefully that does not happen for you. But good. And then let's move on to another item, another example. Another example is about having a few problematic items, not all. So as you can see from the correlation matrix, there are a little bit of lower correlations, right? Say 0.0. Negative 0.0110. It indicates that there are not a lot of consistency going on in the patterns of responses among items. Good. And if you move on to the next page, then alpha is 0.73, which is not too bad, but if you say exclude own style item, then alpha becomes 0.75, which is an improvement, really. It's not huge, but it's an improvement. So there are 3 items that actually help with improving the Chromebox alpha. So let's say we drop the 3 weak items. Okay. And then if you look at the alpha table after you drop the 3 weak items, then you can see the alpha is 0.7815, which is a significant improvement compared to the last table. Good. And then there could be another item that, like another item that is weak after you drop the 3 items, but I wouldn't go further than that in terms of like drop dropping more variables. Don't do that. Just look at the first table and then drop the weak items and then just construct a scale out of that. That's fine. All right, any questions? No? Okay. So if you're confused with reading Thrombus alpha or what it is, or reading the tables and whatnot, you should definitely let me know, and then we can just figure it out, like what to do about that. And then especially about like what to do in the face of a weak items, and if this is really dropping this item would be good or not. Just yeah, you should just talk to me about that. Good. Okay. So so far in terms of the Stata example, we have covered constructing. We have covered cleaning all of the variables basically, right? And then now we are constructing the scale. So let's see with the alpha first. See what happens with alpha first. So the command is alpha pm asterisk comma item. So alpha command will show you the Chrombus alpha, the overall Chrombus alpha with pm underscore whatever variable. So all of the items are used for constructing the Chrombus alpha. Good. And comma item will give you this alpha if item deleted part. The last column that we saw in the examples. As you can see, all of the observations are 91 and 91, 91. And then test scale or alpha is 0.8754. The interface of the table could be a little different because it's Stata 15. But it is the aggregate Chrombus alpha. Again, this is over the threshold, the common threshold of 0.7. So I would say that this is not a bad internal reliability at all.
What is the command?
Oh, command alpha, alpha, all of the variables, comma item.
Which column corresponds to the corrected item total?
Oh, I would
It says item rest, not item test.
yeah, I would not use.
Just look at the.
Yeah, just look at the last column. Just look at the last column and then anchor.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, just look at that. Yeah, it simplifies things, and then I wouldn't. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to have you like cover like too much things, you know, for this project. Anyways, yeah. And if you look at these alphas, there is this one, like one or two items that increases Chrombus alpha when dropped, when these items are dropped, but it's the difference is like say 0.04. So I wouldn't stop you from including this item in the scale, honestly. But yeah. But let's see if what happens when you drop these two items that are supposed to increase alpha when dropped. Black Lives Matter, pro-police pipeline. What's that? Pro-police and anti-affirmative action should be dropped, right? Pipeline, pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant, white national, diversity, and item. And as you can see, the aggregate thrombus alpha has increased a little bit. Good. By say 0.114. I wouldn't say this is a significant improvement, so I'll just keep the two items in the scale, so nobody can stop you, honestly. So I would include them all. So how to construct a scale is pretty simple. You should create a variable, generate a new variable named protest scale, and enters all of the this result basically, which is sum of all of the variables. Good. Does that make sense? So if this person said pro police, PM, Black Lives Matter, etc. Then this person said 5, and then this person said 5 to all of the items. Then we have 9 items. So this person's scale would be 45 in that case. Right? So this person would have the value of 45 as the value of that scale. Good. Any questions? All right. Good. There's alternate syntax, but yeah, I would use that. It's a little advanced. And then after you make a scale, you want to have a summary table. Sum SUMM protest scale, comma detail will give you the detailed summary statistics of the distribution of the scale. So apparently there are four smallest values and then 4 largest values in the table. And apparently 3 people answered 5 to all of the questions, which means that they are really supporting liberal protest movements, right? Good. Any questions? No. All right. So the possible minimum is theoretically possible minimum is 9, right? So if someone is really against any liberal movement, then this person would have all 1s, and then that would be 9 for this person, right? There's no person like that in our sample. The minimum is 17 to summary statistics. And then there are a bunch of percentiles, and there's mean, and then there's number of observations. So other things you don't have to know that. You don't have to know either variance in this kurtosis or something. You don't really care about that. You can simply like note what is this. You can be informed what is the distribution look like with that table. And then a better way to get the idea of the distribution of the scale is to have a histogram. How many of you are not familiar with the concept of histogram? How many of you are not really familiar with the histogram concept? Pretty much all of you know what is up, but then yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good. So I'll explain what's going on in this things, but oops, it's not good. X label. Sorry. Yep. All right. So I constructed the histogram with the bunch of syntax, but this syntax is pretty difficult. So my recommendation is use drop-down menu to construct a histogram, and it's just a reference point. And then you can simply click graphics, and then click histogram, and find the variable, put the scale, and click on frequency to know how many people fall in this category of, say, 15 to 18. Okay? And then there's one person who falls in that category. Right? Does that make sense? So the frequency is about how many people fall in this category. 1, 1, 1, about 14, 5, etc. Good. Any questions? No. Good. So you want to click on select the variable, click on frequency, and click on lower limit of first bean to and set the lower limit to 9, because 9 is the theoretically possible minimum value. And then set the width of bean, say 3. You can adjust the width by looking at the table, and then this is an iterative process. If it's too, like, you think it's too thick or something like that, you can refine the categories. For example, like if you set the width of beans to 10 and then click submit, then it'll look like that. And it's not really a detailed look to be informed by the history, right? For you to be, yeah, doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then if you change the width of beans to 5, then it'll look nicer. But if you want a cleaner look in terms of like 10 to 20 or 20 to 30 and stuff like that, you can change the lower limit of first bean to 0, because to more look in the category and see what happens with that. Does it make sense? Or so you it's about just graphical presentation really, and then how to like by looking at the histogram, you want to like adjust a little bit of parameters to have more clean look in that histogram. Good. If you have any questions about the histogram, just let me know. But I definitely recommend that you just use this drop-down menu in histogram. So Professor Oliver is an advanced researcher, so she used the do file command, but you guys are not required to know all of that. So. Good. Any questions so far? Or? All right. So I was going to cover bivariate analysis, but it seems like we have to have another lab session, data lab session. So we have 2 lab sessions going on before the presentation section that we have done for project 1, and just like the one we have done for project 1. So the next week will be about another lab section, and then there will be a section for like this is Wednesday sections will be about like work session for project 2 basically. Does it make sense? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we're going to have discussions the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh right. On Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is way later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was confused. Yeah. So I was gonna mention that, but there's no section on Wednesday, like formal section on Wednesday. I will sit in my office on that day, but yeah, there's no section on the day before Thanksgiving. Yeah.
So basically that day you're hosting like, are you just gonna be obviously?
Yeah, just
like
if you have any questions or something like that, you can just come in or something like that. But there's no section. Yeah. All right. Any questions with project 2? Are you pretty much done with drafting the survey, or did you send out the survey? Or? Good. All right. Things look great then. Yeah. But yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. Really. Yeah. I want you to finish this course without any trouble. So it's yeah. All right. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow in lecture.